Welcome to our deep dive, into encephalitis lethargica, EL for short.
EL.
It's rare, it's fascinating, and we're going to jump right into some of the good stuff here.
Yeah.
We've got a fact sheet from Encephalitis International and some cutting-edge research from Brain Communications to guide us.
Great sources.
Yeah, and you're probably already familiar with some of the basics, but trust me, EL is chock full of surprises.
It is a condition that has been puzzling doctors and scientists for over a century now.
Yeah.
And even with all the advancements we've made in medicine and technology, we still don't know exactly what causes it.
That's what makes this deep dive so intriguing. I mean, we're talking about a disease with historical epidemics, links to Parkinsonism, and a whole lot of misdiagnosis.
Yeah, and to add to the intrigue, there's still no consistently effective treatment.
Oh, wow.
So despite, trying everything from steroids to electroconvulsive therapy, historically, doctors just couldn't find a reliable way to combat EL.
No wonder EL has earned this reputation as a medical enigma.
Abs.
But let's, start by unpacking some of the core facts.
Sure.
The Encephalitis International fact sheet highlights that EL is a serious form of encephalitis, meaning inflammation of the brain,
Right.
and the effects.
Yeah. The effects, they can vary pretty wildly from person to person.
Yeah.
And the fact sheet also points out that EL can lead to post-encephalitic Parkinsonism,
Okay.
which, as you might guess, shares a lot of similarities with Parkinson's disease.
Right.
And historically, EL epidemics tragically affected an estimated 500,000 to 1 million people.
Wow.
And during these outbreaks, about a third of those affected actually died.
Those numbers are a stark reminder of just how serious this condition is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's rewind the clock a bit and kind of delve into the history of EL.
Okay.
It was back in 1916, amidst the turmoil of World War I, that neurologist Konstantin von Economo gave this sleeping sickness its official name.
Encephalitis lethargica. And his observations, were crucial in defining this mysterious illness. But even back then, diagnosing EL was and still is incredibly challenging.
And imagine trying to track a disease with inconsistent records and no clear diagnostic tests.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's no wonder the estimates of EL's prevalence vary so widely.
Yeah, and adding to the complexity, EL seemed to prefer males historically,
Oh, really?
with most cases appearing in younger individuals, usually under 40.
Wait, so younger people were more likely to get it?
Yeah.
That goes against what you typically expect with neurological conditions, right?
Yeah, it's one of the many aspects of EL that really challenges our assumptions about neurological diseases.
Interesting.
And to make things even more perplexing, EL seemingly vanished for decades,
It did.
only to resurface thanks to the work of neurologist Oliver Sacks.
Oh, right.
His book Awakenings brought those historical sleeping sickness cases back into the spotlight.
Right. His work was a game changer for sure. But let's get to the heart of the mystery. What causes EL?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And frustratingly, a century later, we still don't have a definitive answer.
So despite all of our medical advancements, we're still in the dark about what triggers this disease.
Pretty much, yeah.
Talk about a medical cliffhanger.
It is, yeah. Early theories linked EL to the 1919 influenza pandemic.
Right.
It seemed logical at the time.
Yeah.
A global pandemic followed by a wave of neurological issues.
But further research, revealed that the connection wasn't so straightforward.
So the flu theory went out the window.
More or less, yeah.
What did researchers look at next?
Well, more recent studies suggest a possible link to streptococcal infection,
Okay.
the same bacteria that causes strep throat.
Oh, wow.
But like the influenza theory, the evidence remains inconclusive.
Hold on. So first it was the flu, now it's strep throat. EL's origin story keeps getting more and more tangled.
It does. And to make it even more intricate, there's the possibility that some EL cases are actually misdiagnosed autoimmune encephalitis,
What?
where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks the brain.
So EL might not even be EL in some cases. That's a possibility.
They're a neurological imposter.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern, misdiagnosis, especially given the wide range of EL symptoms and the lack of a definitive diagnostic test.
Right.
It's diagnosis of exclusion, meaning doctors often have to rule out other conditions before even considering EL.
That must be incredibly frustrating for both patients and doctors.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine going from doctor to doctor searching for answers while your symptoms remain a mystery.
It highlights the importance of thorough diagnosis and considering all possibilities.
I agree. But let's talk about those EL symptoms.
Yeah.
Initially, it was called sleeping sickness, because well, people would uncontrollably fall asleep.
Right.
But sleep disturbances are just the tip of the iceberg. We're
Oh.
talking a whole kaleidoscope of neurological and psychiatric symptoms.
So not just sleepiness, but a grab bag of neurological oddities.
Exactly.
What kind of symptoms are we talking about here?
Think about behaviors so unusual they were often misdiagnosed as epilepsy hysteria or even intoxication. Imagine the confusion and distress for those experiencing these symptoms not knowing what was happening to them.
That's heartbreaking. And imagine facing a disease with no cure and such a range of unpredictable outcomes.
Yeah, it really underscores the challenges of diagnosing and treating EL. Even the proposed diagnostic criteria, which look for things like influenza-like symptoms, excessive sleepiness, and specific neurological signs, aren't foolproof.
So even with these criteria, it's still a difficult diagnosis to nail down. What does that mean for treatment options? Is there any hope for a cure?
Well, that's the difficult reality of EL.
Yeah.
There is no cure, and there's no consistently effective treatment.
Oh, wow.
While there have been claims of success with various approaches throughout history, none have stood the test of time.
I get that supportive care is important, but is that really all we can offer EL patients in the 21st century?
Well, supportive care is certainly a cornerstone of EL management,
Okay.
but it's not the only avenue. Research is ongoing, and there's always hope for new discoveries. But for now, the focus is on managing symptoms, maintaining quality of life, and providing emotional support to those affected by this very challenging condition.
That emotional support is so crucial, especially when you're dealing with a chronic illness with no known cure.
Absolutely. It's about providing a holistic approach to care, addressing not only the physical symptoms, but also the psychological and emotional toll EL takes on patients and their families.
Right. So we've got a disease that's hard to diagnose, even harder to treat, and comes with a wide range of unpredictable outcomes. EL really does keep you on your toes.
It does. But before we delve into the modern research, let's rewind back to those historical cases.
Okay.
The research article from Brain Communications that you provided offers incredible insights into EL during its peak.
Yeah.
Drawing from a study of over 600 cases admitted to a London neurological hospital between 1918 and 1946.
600 cases? That's a treasure trove of information.
It is.
What stands out to you from this study?
Well, the study confirmed what we've already discussed. EL presents with a wide range of clinical features, and a significant number of cases eventually develop Parkinsonism.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that the researchers found it incredibly difficult to apply modern diagnostic criteria to these historical cases.
So even with all that data, the mystery of EL persisted.
It did,
Hmm?
but they did uncover a possible link to febrile illnesses, essentially any illness that causes a fever.
So anything from a common cold to something more serious could potentially be a trigger. That's a pretty broad range.
It is. And it doesn't necessarily support the influenza theory, because not all fevers are caused by the flu, but it does suggest that some kind of infection might play a role in triggering EL.
It's like a tiny breadcrumb on the trail of EL.
Exactly. And here's another key finding. They found no strong evidence to support environmental toxins as a cause of EL.
So we can cross pollution off the list of suspects.
It seems so.
Hmm.
Remember those earlier theories suggesting that EL was more prevalent in urban areas due to pollution?
Yeah.
Well, this research challenges that assumption.
It's a reminder that we can't always trust our initial assumptions. Sometimes those hunches turn out to be dead ends.
Precisely. Now, remember how we talked about the possibility of some EL cases actually being misdiagnosed autoimmune encephalitis?
Right.
Well, this study explored that angle too.
And did they find a smoking gun?
They found that a significant number of the historical cases might fit the criteria for autoimmune encephalitis, but very few matched the specific criteria for NMDA receptor encephalitis.
So autoimmune encephalitis is still a possible explanation for some cases, but it's probably not the whole story.
Right.
And what about that theory linking EL to catatonia? Did the study shed any light on that connection?
They found that a small percentage of cases met the criteria for catatonia, but the vast majority did not.
Okay.
So while catatonia might be present in some cases, it's unlikely to be the main driver of EL.
Okay, so we've got potential links to fevers, no strong evidence for environmental toxins, a possible but probably not primary connection to autoimmune encephalitis, and a dash of catatonia for good measure. It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It is, and it's these very intricacies that make EL such a fascinating medical puzzle.
That's one way to put it. But I'm ready for some real-life examples. Can we dive into those intriguing case details from the brain communications research?
Absolutely. These case studies really bring the reality of EL to life.
All right, let's hear them.
One case that stood out involved a 12-year-old girl who experienced a range of EL symptoms, including rigidity dystonia,
Dystonia.
which causes involuntary muscle contractions,
Oh.
and oculogeric crises.
Wait, so her eyes would suddenly roll upward and get stuck there?
Yeah.
That's scary. What happened to her?
Or her doctors treated her with levodopa, a medication often used for Parkinson's disease.
Right.
And remarkably, she showed dramatic improvement and fully recovered after just 2 months of treatment.
Wow. So a Parkinson's medication helped a young girl with EL. That's pretty amazing.
It is. It shows that even with a condition as complex as EL, there's always hope for positive outcomes.
Hope is definitely a good thing, especially with a disease as mysterious as EL. What other cases caught your attention?
One case description from Dr. Kinnear Wilson, a prominent neurologist at the time, painted a vivid picture of a patient resembling a pillar of salt.
A pillar of salt. That sounds intense. Was the patient completely frozen?
That's exactly the image it evokes.
Wow.
Someone completely immobile, frozen in place.
Ah.
It really highlights the profound impact EL can have on a person's movement. And then there's the phenomenon they termed phonia paradoxa.
Phonia paradoxa. I'm intrigued. What is that exactly?
It describes a peculiar observation where patients with EL, who typically had very quiet, monotone speech, could suddenly speak normally when they sang, shouted, or spoke in public.
Hold on. They could only speak properly when they were singing or yelling.
It seems that way, yeah.
That's both bizarre and fascinating.
Right. It's like their vocal cords suddenly remembered how to function properly under specific conditions.
It's like EL was playing tricks on their brains, selectively affecting their ability to communicate.
It really highlights the complexity of EL's effects on the brain and just how much we still don't understand about its underlying mechanisms.
So we've got the pillar of salt and phonia paradoxa, both illustrating the strange and unpredictable ways EL can manifest. Any other memorable case details you want to share?
There are so many. One that comes to mind is the description of kinesia paradoxa.
Okay, kinesia paradoxa. Hit me with it.
Essentially, it's the opposite of phonia paradoxa.
Okay.
Patients with severe slowness of movement, called bradykinesia, would experience sudden bursts of normal, even fluid movement.
Wait, so they could go from barely moving to suddenly sprinting? That's wild.
It is.
What could explain such a sudden shift?
That's the question that continues to puzzle researchers.
Yeah.
These cases suggest that something, whether it's a specific stimulus, an emotional response, or even a random neurological blip, can temporarily override the motor limitations caused by EL.
It really is like EL is toying with the brain's wiring.
A very apt analogy.
Yeah. And it brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into Encephalitis Lethargica. But the journey continues. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll delve into even more fascinating research and explore the lingering questions that still surround this enigmatic condition. Welcome back to our deep dive into Encephalitis Lethargica.
Yeah, it's remarkable how these historical cases, provide a window into a disease that still baffles us today.
Yeah, it's like we're piecing together a giant jigsaw puzzle, using clues from the past to understand a present-day enigma. But those intriguing case details also highlight how much we still don't know about EL.
You're absolutely right. A century later, we still haven't pinpointed the exact cause, discovered a truly effective treatment, or figured out how to prevent it.
Yeah, it must be unnerving for anyone facing this diagnosis knowing that there are so many unknowns.
Absolutely. EL reminds us that even with all the strides we've made in medicine, there are still diseases that elude our full understanding and control.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in unraveling the EL mystery?
Well, research is ongoing, and scientists are using cutting-edge techniques to re-examine historical samples. They're hoping to find genetic or immunological clues that might have been missed in the past.
It's like forensic science meets medical history. And while we wait for those breakthroughs, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, those proposed diagnostic criteria for EL outlined by Howard and Lean.
Yes, those criteria were developed much later, based on a more contemporary understanding of EL.
Right, so it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. How well did those criteria hold up when applied to those historical cases in the brain communications study?
That's a great question. The researchers found that while the criteria were highly specific, meaning they accurately identified true EL cases, they weren't very sensitive.
Sensitive in what sense?
In the sense that they might have missed a significant number of potential EL cases from those historical records. The criteria might have been too rigid when applied to the varied and sometimes incomplete medical records from the past.
So some people who actually had EL might have been misdiagnosed simply because the diagnostic tools weren't sophisticated enough at the time?
Exactly. It highlights the challenges of retrospective diagnosis, especially with a condition as complex as EL.
It makes you wonder how many other medical mysteries throughout history have been clouded by inadequate records or the limitations of medical knowledge at the time.
It's a thought-provoking question, and it underscores the importance of constantly reevaluating our understanding of diseases, revisiting historical data, and acknowledging that medical knowledge is always evolving.
So even in medicine, history can be rewritten or at least reinterpreted.
Precisely. And as we continue to explore the mysteries of the brain and the body, we're bound to encounter more instances where the past informs the present and shapes the future of medical understanding.
It's incredible to think that a disease that seemingly vanished decades ago could hold the key to unlocking new medical discoveries. Speaking of those lingering mysteries, let's shift gears and talk about the modern research into EL.
Absolutely. The scientific community hasn't given up on EL, and there are several promising avenues of research being pursued right now.
That's good news. What are some of the key areas researchers are focusing on?
One major focus is on understanding the role of the immune system in EL. Remember we talked about the possibility of some cases being misdiagnosed as autoimmune encephalitis.
Right.
Well, researchers are digging deeper into that connection, looking for specific immune system markers that might distinguish EL from other neurological conditions.
So they're trying to pinpoint the immune system's fingerprints in EL. What else are they investigating?
Another area of active research is genetics. Scientists are using advanced gene sequencing techniques to analyze DNA samples from EL patients, both historical and contemporary. They're looking for genetic variations that might make individuals more susceptible to developing the disease.
So uncovering the genetic underpinnings of EL could potentially lead to targeted therapies or even preventative measures.
Exactly. And there's also growing interest in exploring the potential links between EL and other neurological conditions, particularly Parkinson's disease.
That's interesting. What's the connection there?
Remember how we discussed that EL can lead to post-encephalitic Parkinsonism, which shares many features with Parkinson's disease?
Right.
Well, some researchers believe that studying EL might provide valuable clues about the underlying mechanisms of Parkinson's as well.
So EL could be a key to unlocking new treatments or even a cure for Parkinson's. That's a pretty significant implication.
It is, and it highlights the potential ripple effects of EL research. By understanding this rare and enigmatic condition, we might gain insights into a whole range of neurological disorders.
It's like EL is a thread that connects different areas of neurological research, leading us to a more comprehensive understanding of the brain and how it can go awry.
That's a great way to put it. And as we continue to follow these threads, we're bound to uncover more surprises and insights along the way.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been full of surprises. We've gone from historical epidemics to cutting-edge genetic research, from bizarre case studies to potential connections with other neurological conditions. EL truly is a medical mystery for the ages. But we're not done yet. There's still more to explore in our final chapter.
Join us for the thrilling conclusion of our EL journey, where we'll delve into the big unanswered questions, contemplate potential future directions for research, and consider the broader implications of this perplexing illness.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into encephalitis lethargica. We've journeyed through EL's history, explored its puzzling symptoms and potential causes, and uncovered some fascinating case studies. Now it's time to kind of tackle the big lingering questions.
Right.
As someone who's clearly interested in EL, you're probably wondering what researchers are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Despite all the research, the most pressing question remains, what exactly causes EL? We've examined the influenza connection, explored the possibility of streptococcal infection, and even delved into autoimmune responses. But none of these theories fully explain the complexity of EL.
It's like we have all these puzzle pieces,
Yeah,
but we can't quite figure out how they fit together to form a complete picture.
that's a great analogy. And to add to the mystery, there's the question of why EL seemed to vanish after the 1920s. Did it truly disappear, or did it transform into something else, perhaps hiding in plain sight as other neurological conditions?
So EL could be lurking in the shadows, masquerading as other illnesses. That's a bit unsettling. And what about treatment? I know we discussed the limitations of current options, but surely researchers are working on finding better ways to manage EL, right?
Absolutely. While supportive care remains crucial, the ultimate goal is to develop treatments that target the root cause of EL, not just manage the symptoms. And that requires a deeper understanding of the disease's underlying mechanisms.
Yeah, it makes sense. Right now, it's like we're treating the smoke but ignoring the fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of EL's long-term impact. We know that the outcomes can vary dramatically, with some individuals making a full recovery while others face lasting neurological deficits. But we still don't fully understand what determines these outcomes. Why do some people bounce back while others face a lifetime of challenges?
So many questions, and unfortunately not enough answers. But I have to believe that researchers are working tirelessly to solve these EL riddles.
They are, and despite the challenges, EL research continues to make progress. Scientists are utilizing advanced technologies and innovative approaches to unravel the mysteries of this very complex condition.
That's reassuring. What are some of the most promising avenues of research?
One exciting area is the investigation of the immune system's role in EL. Remember how we discussed the possibility of misdiagnosis with autoimmune encephalitis?
Right.
Well, researchers are now searching for specific immune system markers that could differentiate EL from other neurological conditions.
So they're looking for the immune system's fingerprints in EL. What else are they exploring?
Genetics is another hotbed of research. Scientists are using cutting-edge gene sequencing technology to analyze DNA samples from EL patients, hoping to uncover genetic variations that might predispose individuals to the disease.
So if they can pinpoint the genetic risk factors, it could open doors for developing targeted therapies or even preventative measures, right?
Exactly. And there's also growing interest in the potential connections between EL and other neurological disorders, particularly Parkinson's disease.
We talked about that earlier. Is there any evidence to suggest that EL research could lead to breakthroughs in Parkinson's treatment?
It's still early days, but some researchers believe that studying the mechanisms of post-encephalitic Parkinsonism, which often follows EL, could shed light on the development of Parkinson's disease itself. The hope is that by understanding one condition, we might gain insights into the other.
It's fascinating how EL seems to be connected to so many different areas of neurological research.
Its EL research is like a ripple effect spreading outward and potentially impacting our understanding of a wide range of brain disorders.
Okay, so research is ongoing, there are promising areas of investigation, and there's hope for new discoveries on the horizon. But as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway message for our listeners? What should they be thinking about after learning all about EL?
I think the most important takeaway is that EL, despite its rarity, serves as a powerful reminder of the brain's vulnerability and the profound impact neurological disorders can have on individuals and society.
It's a reminder that even in the 21st century, there's still so much we don't know about the brain and how it works or doesn't work, as the case may be.
Absolutely. But EL is also a call to action. It's a challenge for the scientific community to continue investigating this complex illness, to search for answers that could lead to better treatments, earlier diagnosis, and hopefully one day, a cure.
So EL might be a mystery, but it's a mystery worth solving, not just for those affected by EL, but for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought. Could there be a connection between the psychological and neurological aspects of EL that we haven't fully grasped yet?
Ooh, that's an intriguing question. It makes you think about the mind-body connection and how much we still don't understand about how they interact, especially in the context of a complex neurological condition like EL.
Exactly. And building on that, what can we learn from those historical cases of EL about the brain's resilience and adaptability?
Those are some truly thought-provoking questions, and I encourage you to explore those ideas further. If you're looking for more information on EL and the latest research, check out the resources provided by Encephalitis International. They're doing incredible work in supporting those affected by EL and advocating for continued research.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, and I hope you've come away with a newfound appreciation for the complexities of the brain and the importance of ongoing medical research.
Well said. Until our next deep dive, keep those brains buzzing.